And just like that, the Sex and the City women are back in the city on HBO Max, and we're going to talk about season 1 of that reboot, among some other shows and some TV news as well. Let's do it right now. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV news and reviews for the week. We've got a couple weeks left of TV news and reviews for the year. I was trying to catch up before the year ended, so we're going to just do a few videos here before I get to my best and worst of 2021 in television. So we've got 4 shows to talk about today. And Just Like That, which is the new Sex and the City reboot on HBO Max. We've also got Ragdoll on AMC Plus and BMF on Stars. A couple of shows that fell through the cracks for me because I did not have those streaming services until recently. So they came out actually a few weeks, or even in BMF's case, a few months ago. But we're going to get to them today. And then also a new Netflix sort of retro show from SNL's Kyle Mooney called Saturday Morning All-Star Hits. But first, we always talk about the news, so let's get to that here in a moment. But I do want to welcome you in first to Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do TV news and reviews every single week here on the channel, yeah, review pretty much all the new shows coming out. So let's get to the news. We have a bunch of renewals and cancellations to talk about here at year's end. A few of these I'm pretty excited about. The one I don't really care too much about, but may be of interest to you because it's a very popular show. CSI Vegas is returning for season 2 on CBS for the reboot series. However, William Peterson, the star of the original CSI, and he came back for season 1 of this, will not be on the show. He will remain as an executive producer, but his contract was for him to act in the first season only, and then I guess he had at liberty, he was at liberty to decide for himself if he wanted to continue on or not, and apparently he decided not to, but the show will be back for season 2. So far, this is only the second broadcast network fall show renewed for next year, at least from the freshman series. La Brea over on NBC is the other one that we will see return in the next TV season. Other than that, Servant renewed for a 4th season at Apple TV, and it will be the last. M. Night Shyamalan, one of the executive producers, and I don't know if he co-created it as well, but he said he planned to tell that story in 40 episodes, never knowing if he would achieve it or not, but they have given him 10-episode seasons so far, so he will conclude then with season 40 of that show, and season 3 has yet to premiere. That'll be just a few weeks away, though. January 21st is when we can look forward to that. Why Women Kill is returning to season 3 on Paramount Plus. This is another new cast because it is an anthology series, so we'll continue on with different characters and actors, but this is a pretty popular show. I have not gotten to sit down and watch it yet, but it seems like the kind of show I would really like, so at some point I may have to try and hit that. And then here's a good one. You'll hear about this one, I think, in my top shows of the year in a couple of weeks. Yellow Jackets renewed already for season 2 at Showtime. This is currently stands at 100% with critics on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has appeared on many year-end lists, including, like I said, in a couple of weeks you're going to hear it on mine, I'm pretty sure. And the creators said they have envisioned a 5-season show, so hopefully Showtime allows them to spread out that storyline. I've only seen, I guess, the first 3 episodes, maybe. I think there's probably 5 up by now, but I really, really am into the show. Love that Yellow Jackets. And then 2 that are ending that, one I thought was okay, I never really followed up with, and the other I really did not like at all. You may hear about it on my worst of the year. I'm not quite sure yet, but that one is Head of the Class. That is done after just a 10-episode first season, and now only season on HBO Max. I gave this, I think, a D. I mean, it's really quite bad, not very funny, trying way too hard, on the whole woke front, and checking the different boxes, and I did not really care for it. And then Diary of a Future President, I thought that was okay, over on Disney Plus. That is done after 2 seasons. They've already aired both of them, so whatever's up there, that is going to be it. I think it's 20 episodes total. And this was actually only their third scripted show to premiere. I guess the other two would have been The Mandalorian and High School Musical, the series or something. I forget what the full title of that is, but I guess that would be their two scripted shows that sort of premiered when the streamer launched, and then Diary of a Future President came maybe like 2 months later. But then, of course, now they're all about the scripted. They have so many different, between Marvel properties and reboots of old shows like The Mighty Ducks and Turner and Hooch, old movies, I should say. They really have a lot of content now. But Diary of a Future President was, one of their first scripted. And what's interesting is it actually is not produced by Disney. Most of their shows are produced sort of in-house there. This was actually produced by CBS Studios, so makes maybe even more sense to cancel it, as they're sort of paying for the rights for it in that regard. But all right, in casting news, we've got more Law and Order season 20 news. I know every week I seem to have a new cast member popping up, but these ones I think are interesting. Cameron Manheim, who I just love, she's going to take part in season 20. And then the biggie, they finally hooked him. Sam Waterston returns, which will be his 17th Law and Order season overall, but the 20th of the show. So I think he started out with the show and then left after, I guess, season 16 or whatever. But he was one of the longest tenured members on that show. So I figured if he wanted to do it, he would be back. And he's still, of course, acting. He's doing, Grace and Frankie, and he still gets around. So good for him. Love Sam Waterston. John Hamm is going to join the cast of Good Omens. So this was supposed to be just sort of a mini series, but it was popular enough they decided, well, let's do a season 2. It's based on a book by Neil Gaiman, but I don't know if this is a series of books or if they're just sort of extending this universe on their own, not from any source material. I'm not sure, but Hamm is going to be playing Archangel Gabriel. I love this guy. He's so funny, and I think he's going to fit right in with that cast. Michael Sheehan and everybody from that show. I really enjoyed that first season of Good Omens, so glad that that's coming back. And then 2 people are out. Usually when we talk about casting news, we talk about announcements of who's been added to shows, but we have a couple people that have been subtracted from their shows. Jeff Garlin is out at the Goldbergs. There's apparently been 3 straight years of HR complaints about his on-set behavior, and he said, look, these are just jokes, and this is how I behave, and they've talked to me several times about it, and we have a disagreement about what's appropriate. That's not really, I think, the sort of statement you want to make about it, because I don't know what the onset behavior was, but who's to say, I guess, unless we hear something more concrete. But yeah, if HR is coming to you 3 years in a row about an issue, you might want to correct that problem. Personally, I do think the Goldbergs is a bit long in the tooth. It probably should have been canceled a year or 2 ago anyway. But yeah, he's out effective immediately, so there'll be like 6 or something more episodes that they shot with him, but after that, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to kill the character or what. But they just lost George Siegel because that actor died last year, so still sort of dealing with that as well. And then this is the biggie. Chris Noth is out at the TV show The Equalizer with Queen Latifah. He was one of the co-stars, and we'll be talking about him a little bit more with the Sex and the City reboot later on in this video, but he's done. He has had a few complaints about him from dating back, some of them 15 plus years, but now that he's back in the spotlight with the Sex and the City reboot and The Equalizer and this Peloton commercial he was a part of, some women have come forward. I don't want to get too political or that sort of thing, but I do think we are setting kind of a dangerous precedent in this era of, like, we don't even, it's not really innocent till proven guilty. It's not, let's have a trial. It's a couple of accusations and boom, he's dropped from his agent, he's dropped from everything. And I don't know, to me personally, I would rather hear further things or take it to a trial. Look at Chris Hardwick. That he got sort of blasted for some things, and that turned out to be maybe not true, and he ended up losing a couple of his lucrative jobs, and he's since gained them back. But yeah, it's a hard line to cross. So whatever. Obviously, people felt like they had enough evidence there to can Chris Noth, but he is out at the Equalizer there. And all right, so let's move on now to some New Year's Eve shows. Of course, New Year's Eve coming up. So we've got Ryan Seacrest extending his contract to host Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve for 3 more years after this year's broadcast. So this will be his 17th broadcast already. I can't believe it. But he stepped in when Dick Clark had his stroke, which was, believe it or not, 2005, I believe. So that was Ryan Seacrest's first year hosting the New Year's Rockin' Eve, and still doing it to this day. And so they'll extend it now to his 20th year hosting in 3 years. Fox Toast and Roast with Ken Jeong and Joel McHale canceled for the year with all of the Omicron variants popping up and everyone getting COVID. They decided this is not the time. And it was going to have include performances from Imagine Dragons, Pink, Billy Idol, not Billy Joel, Maroon 5, and Trace Adkins, among some others. Would have been a pretty hip show, I think, but they've decided not to go forward with it. Every other New Year's Eve show so far is going on as planned. CNN and Fox News are having dueling specials as well. CNN bringing back Andy Cohen and Anderson Cooper. Fox News just having, I guess, some of their anchors on. And Seacrest's New Year's Rockin' Eve. And as far as I know, I believe NBC's is still on as well, with Miley Cyrus and Pete Davidson down in Florida, which is actually where I will be New Year's Eve, going down to Disney with my family. So, I don't know. It seems kind of crazy. I mean, when we think about the fact that Saturday Night Live last week was supposed to have a live show, Paul Rudd was going to be the host, and everybody was going to be in the cast and all of that. But then several cast members got COVID, so they scaled it back, and then they scaled it back a little more. And then by the time, Saturday night hit, they had decided about 4 or 5 hours before airtime that they just could not do a live show. So it was this like weird hodgepodge of a couple of taped sketches that Paul Rudd had done during the week with the cast members, and then a bunch of like Christmas memory sketches from years past. It was very odd, but there you go. I mean, that was canceled just hours before. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with the New Year's programming. We shall see in about a week. Over to Odds and Ends. Atlanta finally setting a 3rd season premiere on FX in March of 2022. This is now almost 4 years after season 2. It's hard to believe, but part of it was obviously the slowdowns in taping from COVID last year. But Atlanta was renewed for seasons 3 and 4 years ago. And then it just never happened, and some pundits were wondering, will it happen? And so here we have our answer. That's, by the way, just to go off on a brief tangent, that's what kind of pisses me off about Netflix's response about Glow. We can't renew Glow because who's going to care in 2 years once COVID subsides and we can, film new episodes. And I think a lot of people would care. Glow had a nice big fan base, and here we are almost 4 years between seasons of Atlanta. And people are going to tune in, I'm sure. Big Nate, the book series for young children, is coming to Paramount Plus. Ben Giroux from Henry Danger is going to voice the titular character, who is, if you don't know, a 6th grader who believes he is just awesome. He's very funny and entertaining and a bit insecure, but he's not about to let the rest of the world know that. My nephew reads these books, loves Big Nate, so this was big news for him. Dove Cameron and Rob Delaney are going to provide some voices as well. And then finally, in some Emmys news, nothing about nominees or anything, but they have decided at the Emmys to finally just let the producers decide whether their show is a comedy or a drama. There's been, for years now, probably maybe about 10 years. I remember Orange is the New Black originally went in as a comedy, and then a couple of years into that, the Emmys were like, you know what? If your show's an hour long, we're going to put you in drama, and if you're a half-hour show, we'll put you in comedy, unless you specifically voice concerns about that. Like, I think Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was able to do their show as a comedy in the comedy categories, even though it's an hour long. But here's the problem. So many shows now are cropping up that are half hours that just are not comedies at all. Transparent was the biggest sort of blunder of that. Transparent was not a comedy. The first season maybe had, a few laughs here and there, but for the most part, it was a depressing, heavy-hitting drama, family drama. SNL, to bring it back to them, they did a sketch about it a few years ago, that, all the shows, all the laugh track shows on CBS don't get any Emmys anymore, people love Big Bang Theory and they love Mom, but they don't get awards love. So now let me introduce you to CBS's new, primetime sitcom, and it's, this really depressing, person with cancer or something. And but that's what a lot of these shows have become, and they're not really comedies, so I think it's great. Let the producers decide whether they feel their show is dramatic or comedic. And years ago, like when Desperate Housewives came on, they listed that as a comedy, and it's, sort of was, but it's more soap opera-esque. It wasn't necessarily like a laugh out loud comedy. So I don't know. There's been so many hybrids lately with the dramedies and stuff. Really ever since that era of like Ally McBeal, Desperate Housewives, Ugly Betty, all that sort of thing. So anyway, just a little Emmy rule change for you. All right, so let's move on now to the reviews, and we're going to start. Actually, this is a perfect segue because this show used to be a half hour, but now the new reboot is an hour, or 50 minutes really. It's like between 45 and 50 minutes per episode. But I would assume this would be up in the comedy category if it makes the Emmys, and that is the new Sex and the City reboot called And Just Like That. And you've probably heard a lot about this because, of course, Samantha, the Samantha character, is not returning. Kim Cattrall, had a huge public falling out with Sarah Jessica Parker and the other ladies on the show a couple of years ago and said she would never return and this and that. So personally, a lot of people were asking, like, well, what is Sex and the City without all four of the women? There's only three now in the main group. And I was asking that as well. I was not looking forward to this show. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I reviewed, I think it might have been The Sex Lives of College Girls. I'm sorry, it was Harlem. That's what it was. And I reviewed that pretty favorably, and I said, this is sort of what Sex and the City was 20 years ago, but now they're setting it, in a more urban setting. It's an almost all black cast. And one of the complaints of the original Sex and the City is, very, very whitewashed, basically. But I wasn't really looking forward to this show, to be completely honest. But we see where the women are now, the three remaining ones anyway in the main cast: Sarah Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, and Kristen Davis. And Michael Patrick King returns. He was the original creator, and he developed this new version. I'm sorry, Darren Star created it, but Michael Patrick King, directed a lot of the episodes, wrote a lot of the episodes. And so he's back on as producer as well. And this basically sets us in the current timeline. It's about 10 years after the events of Sex and the City 2, the movie, which was in 2010. And we see where the women are. And yes, we have added a handful of new not white faces to the cast. I think maybe they heard some of the complaints and so added, a more diverse cast. In fact, you've got Sarah Ramirez on, who is, I guess she's non-binary. They are non-binary, I believe. And I first came to know them through Madam Secretary. They played one of Madam Secretary's actual secretaries, or press people or whatever. And here they play Carrie's boss. Instead of writing, the articles these days, Carrie is on a podcast, and it's a very, sex-driven podcast. So, but we see them in there. And then also Miranda, Cynthia Nixon's character, has gone back to school, and she has a African-American teacher, and she sort of is stumbling all over her words and always saying the wrong thing, and that sort of thing, getting her into some trouble. And then we do have some great familiar faces in the man version from the original. Willie Garson is here as Stanford. Of course, the real life Willie Garson passed away earlier this year, so he is only, I think, in the first 3 or 4 episodes. And then Mario Cantone is here as well. We love him. Evan Handler playing Harry Goldblatt, who is Miranda's live-in boyfriend, long time boyfriend kind of thing. Anyway, I actually liked this a lot more than I thought I would. Like I said, I wasn't really looking forward to it. I thought, well, look, the magic was there 20 years ago, um, but do we really want to see a show about women, uh, you know, in their 50s and 60s still, dishing out sex advice and all of this kind of thing? And I made the comparison, I think, when I talked about Harlem, actually, that, Golden Girls is one of my favorite shows, so it's not really an ageist type thing, I don't think. I love Betty White. I love shows about old people. I love Grace and Frankie, to bring that up again. But I just thought, look, I think this show had run its course, and especially if Samantha's not on, I was shocked at how invested I got immediately back into the lives of these women. And Sex and the City is a show that I have seen all the way through exactly once. I've seen random episodes here or there as well, but I've watched it from start to finish just one time. And I always thought, okay, this is a very well written show. It's funny. These ladies have great chemistry together. I thought all of that stuff, but it never, I never really wanted more. When it was over, and I watched it years after it ended, so I didn't necessarily want more. I didn't ask questions about what are these women up to. And I enjoyed the first movie. I didn't really care for the second movie at all. Um, but yeah, I honestly was floored with how into this show I was, and I got right back in with these characters. I think the biggest negative of the show, and there's actually two of them, is that it is too obviously trying to sort of speak to the critics about the show being too white earlier. Every single new character they've added is all the United Colors of Benetton, and they are just I think sort of really making it like a mea culpa for the original being so white. And it's great. I love diversity, as a gay man especially. I love it. But it just seems like it's too obvious. They're really, especially like Miranda sort of stumbling on her words, and sort of making a fool of herself in front of her new African American professor, and then Carrie sort of shying away from some of the more juicy topics, with her co-hosts on the podcast, and it just all seems a little too forced. So I didn't really love that. And then the other thing is, they addressed the whole Samantha thing, and I thought that was a bit clumsy. Now, in the second episode, there's another nod to Samantha that I actually thought was really classy, and it worked well. But I don't know. I guess they had to say something, because obviously she's not there, and we sort of know what happened behind the scenes. But addressing it in front of the camera, I guess, is something they felt like they needed to do. But I thought that was a bit clumsy as well. So I think it's taking them a little while to get into the groove. But the shows are longer. Like I said, the original ran like 25 to 30 minutes. These run about 45. And I won't give away spoilers, but you've probably heard what happens, in those first couple episodes. And it has to do actually with, Chris Noth that we talked about earlier in the news segment. So I don't want to give spoilers, but that was definitely something that I had heard before I watched it. So it wasn't as emotional, I think, as they wanted it to be. But maybe if I hadn't heard all the rumors, and sort of gotten spoiled about what happens, maybe I would have felt differently about that. But yeah, I was surprised how quickly I just got right back into it with these women. A show that I never really held that dear. So for that, I will give. I always forget the show because I just want to call it Sex and the City. And just like that, I'm going to give it a B. I think a little too clunky at places, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. All right, so let's move on to our other like brand new show, and this is on Netflix, Saturday Morning All-Star Hits, and it comes from Saturday Night Live's Kyle Mooney. He plays twins Skip and Trebor, and it's basically a satire, I guess, of the late 80s and 90s, like Saturday morning cartoon lineups of Fox and ABC specifically, and TGIF a little bit Friday nights, where these kids are sort of, both played by Kyle Mooney. They're not really kids, but, they are supposed to be, running on their little adventures and doing their jokes, and they're sort of back and forth between each other. And they're sort of interspersed between these cartoon and Saturday morning, Saved by the Bell type show mock-ups. They're sort of satirizing those. And it's a lot like something I feel like you would have seen on Adult Swim, sort of like that Stephen Brule show with John C. Riley. It's all that sort of tongue-in-cheek, like we're doing parodies of all this stuff from back in the day, and it's very funny. And this is really what Saturday mornings were like for about a decade. And it reminded me as well a little bit of some of like the MTV stuff when Pauly Shore was on in the 90s, doing like the MTV Beach House and those sort of like interstitials between the music videos and in this case it's the cartoons. So there's a lot of mixed feelings here. Kyle Mooney is a very acquired taste. If you watch his stuff on SNL, I think he's sort of in that vein of like Will Forte, maybe 15 years ago, where it's a lot of like really cerebral stuff. It's stuff that maybe doesn't elicit huge laughs, but is more like it's just like well done satire. And so I can't say I got a huge amount of laughs from these episodes, but the parody and the satire is spot on. I mean, like, they've really, really recreated that feeling of what a lot of these shows looked like 30 years ago, on ABC or Fox Kids Saturday mornings or whatever. So I have to give Kyle credit for that. And there's a whole host of great voice actors and SNL alum and current SNL players too that are on this show. Other than Kyle Mooney, we've got Dylan Sprouse, from Riverdale. And Emma Stone is in a few episodes, and Pamela Adlon, who voices everybody, all over the place. Beck Bennett, who's currently on SNL. Chris Redd, who's currently on SNL. Paul Rudd voices a few people. So it's a whole sort of mix of people that just kind of dig this humor, I think, of Kyle Mooney. So the show, like I said, is not all that funny, but it is perfectly spot on parody. The cartoons themselves are, I wish they were a little more varied because they sort of repeat. I watched the first two episodes and it was the same. Two of the cartoons, I should say, were exactly the same. It was like these 8-minute cartoons. One was sort of an Alvin and the Chipmunks type of riff. And then the other one was like this dinosaur living among regular people, and they were making him, cheering him up because, you're just like we are, Mr. Dinosaur, whatever. I think his name was Randy. And that sort of thing. And then they do like a couple parody commercials. I would have liked, I guess, maybe a little more variety in the shows. And as I understand, they do some sort of Saved by the Bell type of show in one of the later episodes. I didn't get to that, but I think a lot of craftsmanship went into this show. I really think it is well done from a parody standpoint. I just wish it was funnier. But I like Kyle Mooney's stuff. I think it's very sort of subversive, off-the-wall kind of stuff. Every time I see one of his sketches get through on SNL, I always just think to myself, man, Lorne Michaels doesn't get this at all. He probably just says, okay, kid, go for it. Because it is a very, very specific type of humor. So it's not going to be for everybody, but I thought this was a really good, riff and parody sort of that stuff. I give Saturday Morning All-Star Hits, I give it a B+. All right, so just two more to go, and these are shows that are a little bit long in the tooth. They came out a few months ago, so you can actually see all of the episodes now of the season on the respective things. But BMF on Stars and then Ragdoll on AMC+. Let's talk about BMF first. It stands for Black Mafia Family, and this is the one I was really interested in. I kept seeing ads for it, and I did not have Stars, and I was like, okay. And then Black Friday deals came up, and I said, all right, give me 6 months of Stars, I guess. I can finally see this show. And some of the other stuff. It's already been renewed for season 2, by the way. 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson, is one of the executive producers, and he sings the theme song here. But this is, about just what it sounds like. It is black mafia family. They are really, it's, sort of a gang war type of show in Detroit. It takes place in the late 80s, and it is based on the true story of two brothers who, sort of rose up to become part of one of the most influential crime families in America. I'm not sure if you'll recognize any of these names, but you may know their faces. Russell Hornsby, Demetrius Felony Jr., Miles Truitt, and Steve Harris are, some of the main people. Steve Harris is all over the place. He was on The Practice way back when, and he was in, Diary of a Mad Black Woman. He gets around for sure in the industry. I really enjoyed watching this show. It's funny, I tried to catch up on the Wu-Tang American Saga show about 2 months ago, because I had watched the first couple episodes of that to review it for you like 2 years ago, and I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and actually finish this first season of Wu-Tang. And after about halfway through the third episode, I just gave up. I was like, you know what? This is all about the violence and let's say the N-word every other line, and I get it. That's what happens on the streets and stuff, but they just didn't seem quite like enough of characters. They just seemed like caricatures of something we might assume. But here, these guys actually seemed like real people, real characters, and of course, it is based on true events and true people, but so is Wu-Tang, of course. But it didn't quite translate there for me. So watching this just about a month after that really gave me some perspective on how much better this show is. I think the acting is pretty good. I'm not quite sure that's where it shines. And I think you might see a lot of things that you've seen before. But I think because it is based on a true story, you get that sort of realistic and gritty element to it. And yeah, there's a lot of gunplay. Yeah, there's a lot of the N-word being thrown around for sure. A lot of MFer as well. That's a big one. But it was more believable to me. And I'm not sure why, because I kind of know a little bit about Wu-Tang and everything, but I thought this was pretty believable and really riveting too. I'm glad it's getting a second season because I am excited to see where the story goes from here. So his Demetrius Flannery Jr. is the son of, the guy he's playing, kind of like in Straight Outta Compton when Ice Cube's son, played him. So, maybe that is what gives it that more authentic approach. I'm not sure. But, I thought this was really good. It was shot really well, too. For a show that takes place a lot of the time at night and, in a dark alley or in a dark room, I was never confused as to what was happening or what I was seeing on the screen. So I think it's shot pretty well too. I rather enjoyed BMF. I'm going to give that a B+. And then finally we've got Ragdoll. This came out about a month and a half ago on AMC Plus. All the episodes are now up, 6 episodes total, and this is from the group that brought us Killing Eve, there's some interesting stuff going on here. It follows the murder of 6 different people who have been dismembered, and their body parts have been sort of sewn together to make one person. That's who they call the Ragdoll. And it's basically about the detectives that are investigating and trying to track down who's doing this as sort of more and more people are getting killed. Lucy Hale is pretty much the main star of this from, I guess she's from Pretty Little Liars, maybe. I know the name and I've seen her like in a couple things, but I did not watch that show, but I think that's where she's from. And we also have Henry Lloyd Hughes here as one of the police officers. And who else? Do I know anybody else really? I don't think so. But it basically follows these detectives as they try to piece together, what's going on and who's doing this and why. I was intrigued by the premise of this show. However, I don't think it comes across quite as good as they'd like it to. And I think part of that is in the acting and I guess sort of the script as well. Sort of goes hand in hand, but a lot of the lines are kind of lame and not really. I didn't feel they were authentic, and the acting, I think, is sort of going hand in hand with that, suffers a little bit. It comes across as kind of corny sometimes, a little bit of stilted dialogue, but I think the central premise is very interesting. And I sort of do like the mystery element of it, and sort of watching it unravel as we move along. I've seen I think 2 of the 6 episodes, and I believe, is this listed as a miniseries or a show? It says series, so I guess we could get a second season of this. I'm not sure if they would be following the same murder, or we would just be following the same detectives, into a different murder. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think people that like true crime type stuff, not that I believe this is based on a true story, but people that are into that sort of thing, or are into things like SVU, Law and Order, or CSI, but want a little more, serialized storytelling. I think this sort of fits right in that wheelhouse. In fact, the acting from like some of the witnesses definitely is reminiscent of that Law and Order style. John Mulaney jokes about it in his routines. About the guy just like, lifting boxes and stuff at the warehouse that can't be bothered, to stop working for 5 seconds to talk to the police. There's a lot of that here, and I definitely think it brings the quality of the show down. But I do like the central mystery. Lucy Hale is good. When I talk about the sort of stilted dialogue, or the more wooden acting aspects, I'm not talking about her. She's actually pretty solid in this. It's sort of everybody around her that is, kind of missing the mark in some ways. So I'm going to leave Ragdoll with a C+. So that's going to do it. Like I said up top, I think I'm going to try to hit 2 more of the TV news and reviews episodes before we get to the best and worst of the year. But like I also mentioned a little earlier, I'm going to be in Disney for New Year's, so I will be gone for like a week. So that probably won't come until the first or second week of January. But that's okay. Hopefully we'll still be thinking about the best things in 2021, and catching up on some of those shows and all of that. So, join me for that. But in the meantime, we've got, MacGruber just dropped on Peacock. There's that Boba Fett show coming out on Disney Plus that I guess I'll watch, even though I did not keep up with The Mandalorian. And then other shows like Ragdoll and BMF that sort of have come out the last 3 or 4 months that I just have not gotten to for whatever reason. In fact, AMC Plus, I think, has at least one of those just from that streaming service. But that will do it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.